I have two teachable subjects. That's where I was trained in education is Ontario. In Ontario, usually you go into your teacher's college or a Bachelor of Education program with two teachables in mind and grade levels too. So I'm by training a high school ELA and visual arts teacher. So I was teaching in northern Saskatchewan. And for us, soapstone carvings became a real niche in our school and our school's culture. A lot of kids enjoyed it because we had several elders who had been trained in soapstone carving. We had a distributor that we used to go through Alberta who would ship us huge blocks, and sometimes I even went and picked them up on my own when I was visiting family in Edmonton. Um, and the soapstone carving was really neat. I learned about it myself. Like I wanted to be able to teach it. So the first year I had elders come in and teach. Um, we had a great one, Clay Natamogan. He came in and he taught. And so there I am learning about files and chisels and sandpaper and smoothing, and because you have to oil and wax and stuff like that at the end of soapstone sculpture. Anyways, it was really awesome. The kids dug the elders being in their classroom. Relationships were really positive. I was in a community called Pine House Lake. Um, anyways, so they're there for 3 or 4 days. I'm teaching with the elders, so I'm like touring around the classroom. Kids had questions. I just saw it, so I can give them the answers about how to do this or that. And they were good with that. The elders left, and I said, okay, so you guys have the start of a soapstone sculpture. So here's where we're going to go with this assignment. You're going to create a soapstone sculpture. It's got to be at least this many inches high and wide. It's got to be of a natural form or figure. Most of them chose animals because animals within Cree culture, especially up north, we had a lot of historical references to eagle heads and things like that. So a lot of students chose animals right away, which was great. There's a couple who tried to get around that expectation. Anyways, the self-assessment part of the story is coming in. So sorry, but at the end of this assignment, I gave them okay, guys, let's look at how I'm going to mark your soapstone sculptures. Really, it came down to a few things. It came down to the form, it came down to the cultural relevance, and it came down to them following the process that the elders outlined. And this was all a module within, I think this was a module that aligned with Visual Arts 20. So I had a 20-30 split. So then I took the 30s in a bit of a different direction because you're teaching two subjects or two grade levels in one class. Anyways, self-assessment just went awful. All year long, I'm bringing in this creative mind approach to teaching visual arts. I was taught it in university. I loved it in my internships. My dad, who's a visual arts teacher for nearly 30 years, used to teach this way too, which is basically that you can give kids a creative work of art project to create, give few parameters so that they can actually be creative. I mean, the more you hunker down a visual arts project with 15, you got 15 expectations. Oh, okay. It's not really creative anymore. You've basically you've sucked the creativity out of them. So I gave them basically 4 or 5 expectations. And as students looked at these expectations and they're finishing up their project, even though they've had the assignment handout for 2 weeks, they all started complaining. They knew the expectations were 3 or 4 things. It had to be polished at the end. It had to reflect an animal appearance insofar as something reflective of their local community and ecosystem, and it had to have followed the process that the elders showed them. Well, they saw what they were creating, and they realized after the elders had come in, after the assignment handout and instructions, that the things they were creating didn't actually follow through on the process exactly, weren't finally finished, and maybe got away from that animals from their local community thing. So in other words, they realized, even though I had been teaching to these expectations, even though I had been modeling them because I was creating a soapstone, that their stuff didn't work. There was basically a riot in class. Kids were frustrated. They had put in weeks of effort towards a project now. One kid even smashed his work because he was just like, this is bullshit. And I was just like, okay. And then I could feel what it was that basically what had happened was they started creating, and this is kind of reference to a previous thing I said, and they were making their babies. These were their babies. And basically the self-assessment that I did with them that one day I made them look at their babies, and I told them in a roundabout way through self-assessment that their babies were ugly, and that's their baby. In other words, the self-assessment came so late in the assignment, rather than in the early stages, right after the elders left in the instruction. Basically, they felt that the week and a half of in-class work periods where I had been touring in them, even though I was touring and helping each of them one-on-one, they felt that my self-assessment tool only revealed to them way later that they had made a mistake all the way through. So for me, the self-assessment plan I had, which was basically just like a cap-off checklist to make sure that they realized, hey, I'm holding you accountable for these. How have you made progress in them? What can you still do to meet these expectations? They saw it as me sabotaging their work and putting creative limitations on them that were unfair. So that was my first year of teaching full time. And that was my first year of teaching up north. And since then, I give more cautions to kids. I reiterate instructions more. Since then, I definitely review expectations more. I definitely go back and reteach skills more than once. I think that's a common teacher failure is, hey, I taught you guys how to use commas once, so now you should know for the next 4.5 months. It's like, no, you probably need to hit comma usage a couple times, just in different ways, and then you can hold them more accountable for it. I mean, there's a reason why I think an experienced teacher on a rubric will have 4 criteria, level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but an experienced teacher who knows they haven't taught an important skill enough will take away the value of that in a final mark, but still give feedback on it, right? Because that group in that visual arts class, they felt blindsided by something that was there all along, only because I hadn't found ways of reteaching those skills the elders gave them, and I hadn't made time to do those self-assessments sooner. So a self-assessment at the very end, when a kid's just about ready to hand their project, is like, it's your worst nightmare, because it's their worst nightmare. Being told after the fact that their baby is ugly. Like that's hard, right? Because all along the way, they could have been making their baby more beautiful for you.